delicious.
So are they all set there? I don't know what this is.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Good evening. I'm going to call the meeting to order. We're going to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, and welcome to the November Committee of the Whole meeting for the Milford Board of Education. Tonight's first agenda item is an informational workshop for the board to familiarize ourselves with the enrichment program, and it's kind of a timely topic given that some board members just attended the CAPE convention last week, which where there was much conversation, especially with the keynote speaker, on educational trends that are really at the very heart of the enrichment program, problem solving and critical thinking skills and higher order thinking skills. So I'm excited to hear this update from administration. And board members, I know we did receive numerous emails from parents of the enrichment program. I know you've all read them, so thank you very much for sending your thoughts along to us. So again, this is designed to be an informational session for us, and with that, I'll turn the meeting over to Dr. Fieser.
Thank you, Mrs. Fleming. In actuality, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Burke.
There you go.
I'm going to turn it over to
I just want to echo what was said. We appreciated the emails that were sent through today, and it's good to know that there is a lot of support for the enrichment program, and I think you'll hear this evening that we feel really good about it. We think there's ways in which we can even make it stronger, but we feel good about it, and we just had a presentation the last board meeting from one of the elementary classrooms met aside, with the enrichment program. So it just gave the board a bit of a taste. So with that, I'll stop and I'll turn it over to Mr. Burke.
Thank you very much. And also I'd like to echo the thoughts that we were very appreciative of all the emails that we received. It's good to know that people really enjoy and appreciate the work that's being done in the schools. And tonight I do have Ms. Carlson to help me out, go through the presentation, as well as all of our enrichment teachers, but I'll let Ms. Carlson introduce them. So just a reminder, again, this was a request of the board just as an update on the enrichment program. It sounds like you had a fantastic presentation at CABE. I'm not so sure we'll compare to that, but we'll do our best. To give you an overview of what we're planning on doing, we're going to just say a little bit about the program, a little bit of the background. We're going to have since we had an elementary highlight at the last board meeting, we're going to have a middle school highlight, take the opportunity to do a middle school highlight tonight, and then talk a little bit about some of the upcoming ideas that we may have with the program. Okay, so at this time I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Shannon Carlson to take us through the first part of the presentation.
Thank you. And I know Mr. Burt just said our presentation may not be as good as Kate's. I am going to disagree with him because you can see already one of the middle school teachers brought in some materials here. So I don't know about anyone else. That looks kind of intriguing. But thank you so much for the opportunity tonight. I know you have a copy of the PowerPoint in front of you, so please at any point if you have questions, raise your hand and ask. We'll be more than happy to address them. Let's just start with a vision of the enrichment program here in Milford. And as a team, Mrs. Kluchnik, who couldn't be here with us this evening, and myself, and our 5 enrichment teachers, who I will introduce in a moment to you, we have been revisiting the vision statement. This was written years ago, so that is one of our next steps Mr. Burke's going to talk about later, is we are revisiting the vision statement and looking at rewriting this at some point during the school year. But as of right now, we work to really have a challenging learning environment for our students, one that's nurturing, one that's safe, one that really promotes our students to take risks. It's a rigorous academic program with differentiated instruction, flexible grouping, providing our kids with challenges corresponding to their level, and maybe at times even pushing them to reach above and beyond their level. In addition, students in the enrichment program are given regular opportunities to engage in peers and interact with students of similar abilities. So they have those opportunities, as Mrs. Glennon just said, to really delve deep into questions and subjects, higher level thinking skills, divergent thinking, inquiry-based and project and problem-based tasks, that the kids, and you'll see in a couple of minutes, our middle school, when Mrs. Plunkett gets up to present, that our kids really engage in those type of tasks when they're in the classroom. And of course, this is all in support of the Common Core standards and aligned and supporting of the standards that the kids are engaging in daily in the classroom. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Burt, who's just going to touch upon the Connecticut Gifted and Talented Law.
So a little background as to, I believe a brief overview of the law was included in your board packet. And again, the law states that we must identify gifted and talented children. This actually falls under special education law. It also defines 3 terms: gifted and talented, extraordinary learning ability, and outstanding creative talent. There's, as was presented in your board packet as well. And one of the important pieces to note is that the term applies to 5% of the student population. In addition, one thing to note is that the districts are not required to provide programming. Programming is permissive, which is their language, and that parents can request educational services, but districts are not required to provide those services. Just to note again, that this is something that we've been doing for decades now. It is something that will continue to do, but not every district does provide gifted and talented programming. For example, my children, not that they're gifted and talented, but there's no, unlike myself, there is no programming in my hometown, for example.
And just to give a little bit of history on enrichment in Milford, the program has been in existence in Milford for over 40 years, way before me. But it's been in Milford for many, many years. It has changed many times as well, with schools closing and redistricting and such. But it is a pull-out model, grades 4 and 5 in the elementary, and 6, 7, 8 in the middle school. Okay? And it's project-based learning. As I just said, the enrichment program takes place in our elementary schools, 4 and 5, and then in the middle schools, and then obviously in the high school we continue to challenge our students in all courses, but even more so in our honors and our advanced placement courses. So just to show that vertical through line and how we do continue to raise the bar for our children. Just to talk a little bit about the selection criteria in grade 3, and this would be students entering grade 4. So during the 3rd grade of the student's education, the selection takes place. There's 3 measures that we look at, and anyone who knows talented and gifted, the guru of talented and gifted education that we look to is Dr. Renzulli. And he's not only known in the country, he's known throughout the entire world. We're lucky enough because he's right out of UConn, believe it or not. So we're very lucky to kind of have him as a resource. And the 3 kind of core characteristics that they focus on is task commitment, high ability, and creativity. And we really took that into consideration when we created the portfolio, and we look at that selection when we're looking at students and their individual levels. So for grade 3 this year, all grade 3 students were administered the Torrance test of creativity. And this is a very non-traditional assessment. It's about 30 to 40 minutes maximum. They even say in the directions to the administrator, make it a fun environment, non-testing conditions. So the kids are provided with colored pencils and crayons, and they're really encouraged to be artistic and creative. So this was an additional new assessment that we administered to 3rd grade students this year, and we got very positive feedback. Just in that it did allow for those kids who may be out-of-the-box thinkers or a little bit more creative, but yet not perform so high in NWEA, that had the opportunity to excel and really show their creativity side of them. The second measure that we look at, and you're familiar with this because Mr. Burr has spoken about this in the past, is our NWEA reading and math. We don't just look at 1 year for NWEA, we actually look at 2 to 3 years of the NWEA assessment that the kids take. Trends over time and growth over time. And then the 3rd component, if necessary, is the Renzulli, and that's Dr. Renzulli who I was referencing earlier. It's a teacher rating scale. It's a 3 to 4 page teacher rating scale that the current classroom teacher fills out, and it asks questions about students' abstractness, attention to detail, elaboration, creativity, and then it asks for student work samples, and they actually provided a portfolio of the students' work. for us to review and consider as well. So this is for all students in grade 3 that would be entering in grade 4. For grade 4 through 7, student portfolios are submitted in the spring. So it's a year-long process that teachers collect student work samples, they collect anecdotal evidence on the student's performance in the classroom, and that's any classroom teacher, whether it's PE, art, music, science, social studies, any teacher can submit a portfolio on a student. Okay, it doesn't have to just be the classroom teacher. So the committee meets in the spring, and the committee consists of Mrs. Kluchnik, the PPS middle school supervisor, myself, and the 5 enrichment teachers. And we sit for 3 or 4 days and we go through every student portfolio. And we look at the following when we're going through the portfolio. We look at first those student performance assessments. We talked about earlier how the student performs on NWEA. We look at the teacher recommendation, that compilation of student work samples and the anecdotal evidence and any sort of evidence or summary that a teacher might submit on the student. We look at that Renzulli teacher rating scale, which is very telling for us. There's actually a cut score that we use. We look at report cards for the past 2 years on the student. And then we also look at, obviously, student work samples. And again, we encourage as many student work samples as possible. We've even gotten audio and video recordings of piano playing and guitar playing and such. Coding, right? Everything. So we want to encourage the creativity of all the kids as the portfolios are submitted. The current structure right now is we have 5 enrichment teachers. We have 2 at the elementary level. So we have Mr. Stack and Mrs. Rogers, who I believe you met 2 weeks ago. Mr. Stack is the enrichment teacher at Mathewson, Orchard Hills, JFK, and Meadowside. And Mrs. Rogers is Live Oaks, Half Pen Meadow, JFK, or Pumpkin,
and Orange.
Orange Ave. I was getting confused. And then we have our 3 middle school enrichment teachers, and they are by content area. So I don't know if you remember 4 or 5 years back, and those of you that are new, you wouldn't, but we went to enrichment teachers content specific. So Mrs. Plunkett is science, Mrs. Stoltenberg is English language arts, and Mrs. Kim is math. And at the elementary school, it's a full day enrichment. It comes out to about 4.5 hours because the kids do attend their specials in the morning, and then they come to enrichment. In the middle school, it's a 3-period block every other week, so the children aren't missing the same classes every week. So over the course of the month, they miss the same class twice. And so it comes out to about 2.5 hours.
We see them every week.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's
That
just-
was the way, I'm sorry, it rotates morning,
Morning,
afternoon, morning, afternoon. Questions? Mr. Kidraga.
What was the lady on the end's name? I didn't get her.
This is Mrs. Kim, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
hi,
Mrs. Kim.
Thank you.
So,
Excuse me.
yes, Mrs.
Um,
Rico.
Thank you. So when you talk about the selection criteria for grades 4 through 7, is it that students are selected at the end of grade 3 and then additional students could be selected in any of those grades between 4 through 7?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's a good question, thank you. So I know in many districts, they will just say, 3rd grade. I know in my own kids, it's 3rd grade, they all get tested, and that's kind of it. In Milford, when we look at the portfolio process, we realize kids change year to year. So we want to give them that opportunity. So teachers can submit a portfolio grades 4 through 7
Okay.
on any student.
And then do students ever come out of the program?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, anyone want to answer?
Yeah. It's rare, but there have been students who have not participated due to various, on an individual basis.
Okay.
There's some issues.
Okay.
Mrs. Krasinski?
Thank you. So in 3rd grade, every student has a portfolio, every student does these tests, and every teacher prepares something for every single student?
I can take this one. No, in 3rd grade, the previous structure for 3rd grade was that portfolio process,
Okay.
and we found that well, I found through working with Ms. Carlson and the teachers that it was limiting because ideally you're supposed to look at all students, and we're talking 400 students. So what we determined is there a way to use our existing assessment structure and then add in that creative element piece to at least give us, a cut score, if you will, that would, give us a top tier level of student, and then we could go to the teacher rating system for those other students, for the students that are in the area to get us to that percentage that we're looking for on a yearly basis.
Okay, and then my other question is, we have, in middle school, there's no math so children who are gifted in art and music are not. It seems like the testing for third grade would include them, but then once they get to middle school, there's no enrichment for art and music. Do we include that as gifted and talented, or?
Not traditionally, not art and music. Usually kind of outside of our own specialists usually pick up, that area. We have art and architecture as a unit, so while we don't primarily, we do cover top to foot in a different way. So we only will pick, like we did a lesson in Duchamp, the sculptor, and we had kids, create sculptures that way. So we kind of specifically target an interest, and that was at least with me when I'm doing the unit, we target specific areas of interest in the children, and then kind of pair them with the artist. And we have them either recreate that work of art. So it's a different kind of an art class built into our program.
Okay.
So kind of
But the kids that we kind of put in gifted and talented are more the group that are academically gifted and talented, not artistically gifted and talented.
I think that was one of the pieces too, of when Mr. Burt and I had the initial conversations and with the team, I think that was our initial thinking too, as well as behind the Torrance. Many districts have moved to that because there is that missing component of the creativity piece, although a lot of that is included in the work samples and the portfolio that teachers do submit on kids, but the creativity piece in the Torrance is really able to capture that for the art and music kids as well.
Am I correct that there's a bit of a difference between, say, an enrichment program and a gifted and talented program? Somewhat?
Well, I think we use them interchangeably, to be honest with you. In my mind, I believe there is a difference. There's, for me, enrichment could be for anybody. By the law, the gifted and talented, in my mind, is that top 5% of students.
But we don't typically look at the talented piece right now. We haven't.
I would say no. Currently, no. There is that, if we're strictly talking about visual arts or music, the fine arts, then no. That is not a singular factor that weighs into choosing students for this program.
And so moving forward, I'd like to turn the program over to our 3 middle school enrichment teachers. Mrs. Pam, Mrs. Plunkett, and Mrs. Hiltonberg.
So I can speak to the math piece slightly, and I think this kind of goes to your question a little bit, that I think sometimes it's conceived that the math enrichment portion is an advanced math class, and that's not the intention of it. The math enrichment is taking that enrichment and gifted and talented piece and using math as a lens to explore creative thinking, problem-solving skills, some of that problem-based learning. A couple examples is in the 8th grade, we look at investing and money management, and we take scenarios where we play with stocks and investing, and we kind of take that approach to it. We've partnered in the 7th grade with the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary here in Milford. They're located right here in the harbor. And last year, in conjunction with them, we created a 2-week class where they come in and co-teach and introduce students to charting courses on charts, looking at rates of speed and distance on water, and learning a little bit about the harbor part of this Milford town. So partnering with the community to then apply what they're learning in math, the proportional reasoning, the ratios, the rates, to a real world situation. So there are a couple examples from the math program.
Again, my name is Stephanie Plunkett, and I am the science component, and I brought my friends here. I'm just going to explain one lesson I had done recently with my 7th graders, so I asked my middle school kids to step out. I've only done this so far at West Shore. And this was something I had done at the beginning of the year to segue from a lesson that Ms. Stoltenberg and I had created last year for our PGO, which is our professional growth opportunity under the teacher evaluation plan. So Beth and I had taken a look at a concept called the 100 People Project. And the idea is they take all 7.4 billion of the Earth's inhabitants and condense it down to 100 people, and what that would look like in terms of educational value, socioeconomic, who spoke what language, who educational level, all that kind of thing. And then Beth and I had the kids from West Shore and East Shore Skype with one another and come up with what we thought would be the biggest challenges that we would face as a society as we reach what's called the carrying capacity of the Earth. So we had done that at the end of 6th grade, and this is something I did with my 7th graders. So it's all based on concepts. I don't know if anyone has ever attended, but it's kind of the craze right now, something called Escape the Room. In most major cities in the US, and particularly by the bigger colleges, they have these rooms where you go in as adults and you're set in a scenario, and you're either with a group of friends or with complete strangers, and they give you the scenario and you have to cooperatively solve puzzles to open locks to escape. So based on the idea that Beth and I were looking at these challenges with the Earth's carrying capacity, and later in 7th grade, Ms. Stoltenberg will be looking at human impact projects, I set something up in the media center over at West Shore that's futuristic. So I set up, it looked like a laboratory. I had Erlenmeyer flasks, which is glassware with green glowing fluid in it, and I dropped a key inside, and I hid all kinds of things all over the media center. And then in here, there was an envelope, and there's these multiple locks on this. And I set the scenario up that this Dr. Alex Bohr supposedly has the solution to human salvation. But she's afraid because she's going to be kidnapped because this solution is very valuable and someone's trying to get her. So I tell this to the kids and they're like, okay, is Dr. Bohr real? I'm like, yeah, she's real. I'm like, you don't know her? They're like, no, but she's kind of seen this. And then I put in a video clip, and the video clip is me in front of a green screen. You know what a green screen can set you into anything, and it's an MIT lab. So it goes into this whole scenario of she's hidden stuff around her laboratory. And then the kids have to cooperatively, I mean, I have books that are hollowed out that have batteries in them. I have a lockbox that's hidden, and they have to get the key out to open this, which has a UV flashlight inside it. And all of my combinations have things to do with our topic. So for instance, this thing is called a cryptex. And to solve it, the kids have to figure out the word is toxic. And I had taken my UV pen, and there's my MIT diploma, and I have posters all over the wall, and circled different letters that they have to scramble and open this. And when they open this, inside here is a flash drive, which when they put it into the computer, opens up a map. And then this map is going to lead them to different environmental tragedies. For instance, there was Flint, Michigan. There was deforestation. There was the Exxon Valdez. And they're following the map. We're going north, we're going south, et cetera. And that opens this directional map. And then from there, it opens another link, and they have to get 100% on a quiz that has to do with renewable energy and point and non-point source pollution, which are content areas in the middle school science. I'm trying to think of what, this one here, there was a periodic table, and I had circled different radioactive elements and their symbols, and they had to figure out this was solar or renewable, plus the things were all radioactive. This lock here, actually, one of the things they found in a box, I had made little scratch-off tickets for a lottery. It was called the Global Pollution Solution. And when they scratch it off, it talks about Chernobyl. And the date of Chernobyl, they find in a nonfiction article, which was April 18th, to open this one. Trying to think of what else. This that has one of my keys in it was the call number for all the nonfiction books, which were all 363 for environmental catastrophes. There's lots of. The kids loved it. They had to work cooperatively. And collaboratively, they had a clock going that there was like an hour and a half to finish it up. And then we talked about all these environmental tragedies and the significance.
So can you
College did they go to?
I went to MIT according to my diploma. But I am a Johnny Law girl, so.
You know, this is televised.
You should have seen the blooper reel of my.
I'm just saying, I don't want all the other students to know all the answers to all.
That's why I made Jackson leave. Bummer, I'll have to make up another one. If you ever get an opportunity to go to one of these, they are so much fun. Bring your own grown-up kids. Find that out as former Milford Public School kids. We do this pictures.
Interesting.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
I've got no props.
It's in my car.
But for English language arts enrichment, it's the same thing. It's project-based learning. It's all real world. And I'll talk to 6th grade, because in 6th grade we actually concentrate on inventions. And the Milford Education Foundation was wonderful enough to bring back the Invention Convention to the city of Milford. So our 6th grade enrichment students. So our 6th grade enrichment students all participate in the Invention Convention. So when I start a trimester with my students, I have them reading articles on some relatively current inventions such as synthetic meat, self-driving cars, and Google Glass. And so the kids are enthralled with reading about those inventions, and then they get into collaborative discussions with each other, formulating their opinions as to the pros and cons to those inventions and how they might succeed and might not succeed. And from there, we get into brainstorming, and I know that Mrs. Plunkett and Mrs. Kim as well, since we're all preparing the students for the Invention Convention, we talk about brainstorming and how to come up with ideas for an invention, which imagine that I came in here tonight and told you all you had to come up with an idea for an invention, and you had about 8 weeks to do so, create a prototype and present it at a convention. Some of them are quite stunned and a little bit scared.
Jackson had a great one last year.
Soccer shoes.
Yeah.
I had I play soccer indoor and outdoor, and when I play indoor during the winter, there are little things in the fake turf in the grass for the fields that always got into my cleats and into my socks whenever I played, so I created an invention that was a cloth that went over your cleat to keep all the little bits and grasses and stuff like that out of your cleats and socks.
And it was a usable product. It was very cool.
I actually
had that a
used
few
it
years
for
ago.
most of my season last year until it didn't fit anymore.
And what's great about the inventions is that it is generated by the students. It's what they care about. It could be an invention that helps themselves or students like them. It could be something for adults or pet owners or someone who's got some disability. So it's whatever the student really feels their heart drawn to try to dive in and find a solution to a problem like that. And so then they create their prototype that needs to be working for the Invention Convention, and they have to create a log that documents all of the work that they do. And then they also have to present to the judges, so they're speaking with their peers the whole time to express themselves and their ideas and talk about their problem solving, because throughout the process, it's all creative problem solving. They're thinking critically to solve a problem, but they also have to be creative to come up with something original in order to be successful with that. And then for 7th grade, as Mrs. Plunkett mentioned, human impact projects is what I work on, and it goes along with what we did with the 100people.org thing. And the students will choose a topic. They actually generate a list of ideas for what they can research, and then they choose one to research themselves. And so we get into how do you conduct yourselves to find valid current research on the internet, so that they're looking at information that comes out, in the last year or even the last week, to make sure that they have up-to-date information. And then they take what they've researched about something like microplastics or freshwater depletion or deforestation. And then it's their choice as to how they want to demonstrate what they learned and create some kind of product to share what they learned. And so that creative piece comes in again as to whether they could write a poem, they could, I had a student this trimester who did a great video where he was actually filming, he had the green screen, so he was on the moon talking about the freshwater depletion in a documentary. In 8th grade, we focus on debate and how to conduct yourselves in a proper debate where you're respectful of the other side, and we practice, stating your assertions, coming up with your reasoning, and getting your evidence through, again, practicing your research skills.
Could you quickly, one of you, go over what project-based learning is? We've heard that a number of times. Give an example.
Project-based
Put
learning.
you on the spot.
Would be where the student really chooses a certain.
I think the invention convention is
It is.
a good example.
Because they can choose a problem in a particular area. There are students that will choose something like water filtration, for example, and then they are doing the research to find out how they might solve that problem and what other ways people have gone about that, and then developing it.
And there's a real world goal at the end. So there's an actual product produced at the end that's functioning and is presented to a real audience. You've been there, you've seen them, they have to speak with authority figures, with confidence, and it's nerve-wracking, right? And we prepare for it, we talk about public speaking, and so it's taking all of these skills they learn in other subject areas and applying it to something they're passionate about and having a product at the end that they can show for it.
It's really, I think, moving the onus of responsibility from the teacher onto the student. So the student generally chooses an area of interest or something they really want to pursue, and then they're doing the bulk of the work. Clearly, the teacher has kind of set up everything. I mean, people think, oh no, the teacher's not doing anything. Not true. In order to get the students to be able to do that, there's a tremendous amount of teaching that goes on with respect to the skills the kids need in order to work independently or to work with a team of teachers, et cetera. But it's really for our kids to be able to then do a lot of research and learning on their own or in collaboration in teams. And as you said, they're producing something, but in the process, they're really engaging in the kind of really deep, much deeper thinking than they might in traditional kinds of
If I could just add, finding a mentor too. I mean, even with using the navigation unit that we have, to find experts locally that can speak with the students or email the students more information, whatever they're discovering.
Cross-curricular stuff. When we talk about the stocks, the students pick a stock that they're going to track and they're going to research. And this past few weeks became a discussion about the stock market and the election and how the election affects the instability of the stock market and post-election what happened, and the conversations that it brings up are really not pigeonholed just to one area.
So in the middle school, the three of you, do you rotate amongst the schools?
Today we moved school, yes.
So you each have your content area, and you all teach 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and you just rotate throughout the school system. Very good.
Sure. And just to continue with our overview, just to give you a sense of the percentage of students at the elementary and 4th and 5th grade. Currently, we have 14% of our students in the enrichment program, and the middle schools in 6, 7, 8, we have 15% of our students currently engaged in the enrichment program. So looking ahead, one of the things I do want to address, especially since we saw it in a couple of emails today, is the idea of resources. There was some concerns, and I think one of the things I did hear was about locations. I did ask all the principals today about the locations, as well as speaking to Ms. Carlson, and my understanding is that we do have dedicated spaces in a majority of the schools. There is one elementary that has to share the space with other students just because of the lack of space in the school. But the other, from my understanding, is that it might be a music room, for instance, but on that particular day, it would be used for the enrichment. That's again, my understanding. Do we have a single dedicated room for a program that operates 1 day a week? No. But we have a shared space that we are using for these enrichment programs. Just a side note, as we decline in enrollment, there's a possibility of more space opening up for each of these programs. So, and that's something as we would do as we look ahead, and really what we're trying to do is we want to strengthen our existing program, which as you can see is already strong just from tonight's presentation as well as from 2 weeks ago. We do have a tremendous amount of faith in the program. We do know that our teachers are doing incredible jobs with our students, but we do want to take a look at some of the things. We would do this with any program. We go through curricular review for math, for language arts. We look at textbook resources. We look at current research, and that's what we would do with this program. We believe that it's time for that to really take a hard look at what we're doing in the program, and then find a way to strengthen the existing things that are really working well. One of the steps, as Ms. Carlson talked about first, was to look at our vision statement. That helps drive the work for the remainder of the program. We also want to take a look at our curriculum at all levels. That's in 4th, 5th, and 6th, all the way through 8th grade. One of the things we want to ensure is that we are capturing some of the material and some of the content from the Common Core, and that this is not something completely separate from core area classes. One of the things that I have a concern with is that, do students do something for 4 days of the week and then the 5th day they do something completely different, that there's no transition between the programs. There's got to be some way to work a way that there is that relationship between the two areas. One of the other things that we're talking about, capstone projects, we talked about project-based learning. You can imagine in 4th and 5th grade, is there something you could work over for 2 years that they work to a capstone project and make a presentation to a panel of experts from outside the school district, from local businessmen, et cetera, or people specific to the field. Same thing in 8th grade. Is there something that you'd start to do research in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade? But again, these are all just ideas. One of the things that we are exploring is possibly working with an outside agency to help review our practices. As Ms. Carlson said, we do have a world-renowned expert in state. Why not tap into that? But we also know that out of Columbia Teachers College, there's also other programs that we could tap into. Again, just to take a look at our current practices and say, what can we really strengthen? Other concepts, that we want to talk about is this concept of enrichment for all. That if you read Renzulli's work, there's a lot of elements here that I would want for all students. Who wouldn't want to do the full get out of the lockbox thing? But I would just say the concepts that I want to say almost piloting in the enrichment program. I believe many of these things would be good for all students. Perhaps not in the same format, perhaps in the same length. Not a half day being pulled out of school, out of the classes, but more embedded into their classes. Also more collaboration between the enrichment teachers and the core area teachers. And again, as the middle school teachers mentioned, that interdisciplinary approach. Would that be something that we could have the expertise of the teachers we have sitting here working with our core area teachers to get out of what I like to refer to as lanes, the social studies lane or the math lane? Is there a way that we can use the creativity here to help influence our curricular decisions throughout the district? So again, this is there's nothing definite happening right now. There's I know there's some folks out there that are fearing that we are going to completely remove and abolish the gifted and talented enrichment program. That is not happening. What we really want to do is take a look at our existing practices and strengthen those things that can be strengthened and take a look at perhaps some practices that we may need to move away from. So I am open to any questions if you have any. Or
I wanted to know, back when my children were in elementary school, they participated in the enrichment program, and at that point we were K-5, and it was 2 dedicated classrooms at Captain Meadow, and all the students were brought 1 day a week. There was a rotation to Cap Penn for their enrichment program. And when we went to K2, 3, 5, I think that was when that was changed, and the program was moved into the individual schools. So I'm wondering if it was, when we went back to K-5, was there any consideration given to going back to the former model? Is there one model better than another, other than the cost of the transportation, obviously, but...
So I wasn't here when
correct,
the
yeah.
model
I don't know if
you're
any...
talking about, but what I can say is to my knowledge that... Right, but I know that, for example, from the perspective of the district level, to my knowledge, Mr. Cummings, for example, was not looking to that? I don't, to my knowledge, he doesn't.
I mean, I can speak a little bit to that. I believe even our first year after the reconfiguration, the program might have stayed, I don't think it moved until the second year after the initial reconfiguration. Part of the movement of it back into the classrooms at the schools was actually to increase the connection between the enrichment program and the daily instruction of kids. So that all of our teachers throughout the district had a feel for what was going on in enrichment and could support the kids as they were going in and out much more, and so that the enrichment program supported the curriculum more as well. So it was kind of a combination of factors. It wasn't just based on the busing.
So that makes sense. And is that happening? Is there that connection? And
I mean, I definitely, you know, speaking kind of from the building perspective, all the buildings know more about the enrichment program because there's enrichment programs in all of the schools, rather than just one school being familiar more with the program.
You know, because I can see how it can have its drawbacks in terms of the resources. I mean, the classroom that my kids were in at that point was just jam-packed full of stuff. They could just go through the closets, find what they needed. It was really very incredible. And you cannot duplicate that in you know, 8 different schools, clearly.
When we switched, I think one of the biggest detriments we hit is that materials piece where, you know, we're project-based. For instance, when I was brought on board, I was an engineer prior to teaching. So I was brought in because of my math and my ability to build. When I had subbed, that was my thing. We had tornado chambers. We had large, you know, big projects that kids really worked on the whole year. Now we do trimester, but pretty much because of the limited space, we're kind of, the projects you saw that I had presented last week are all computer-based. That's kind of been the focus because of the limited space. We can't leave things in the rooms. You know, when I say classroom, I have computer labs. So if you think about the room filled with computers, you can't really, for art, you're not going to paint in a computer lab. You're not going to build a tornado chamber or something like that in a computer lab. So for that part, our hands have been tied in a lot of ways with resources. You know, the technological piece has opened up a lot of avenues, and I think you know, it's allowed us to explore a different side of the enrichment program to get different, you know, again, where we had that classroom library, you know, that was almost prior to the internet. I know it sounds crazy, but we didn't have access to Google. So you look at that, for me, my ability now to reach out electronically and get to, you know, authentic people doing research, you know, the plant project that you saw. You know, the old days we would have grown plants and had them measure in the classroom. So now it's through other people's experiment. You're kind of secondhand looking at things where that authentic piece is missing. But that's, I think, the biggest impact for us on the ground was that part.
Okay, thank you. And now to Mr. Whiskeyman.
Since you use a pull-out model, the children involved in enrichment still need to maintain their currency with whatever classes they're involved with. How are they performing in that regard? They have difficulties maintaining their currency with the programs they're involved with, the regular programs, because they're missing some of the classes and that kind of stuff. So how does that impact those who are involved in enrichment?
Thank you. And go back to the question, I believe that was on the talented in, you know, music and art. One of the concerns I would have, especially, you know, at the elementary level, if we identified a student that had incredible art abilities but was below grade level for math and language arts and for reading, to pull them out of class for 20% of the time, I'm not sure that would be the best model. But that's something, again, that we would need to look at, and what are other districts doing, or what are some of the suggestions in order to enable a student that does have that talent to participate in something in the gifted and talented or enrichment realm. That is one of the, in terms of the current students, when we look at data, that is one of the things that we are going to take a deeper look into, is what happens to students that are in these programs over time. For the most part, I believe that they continue to make progress, but we need to do a little bit more in-depth digging into that.
My only concern would be that if a student got involved in the enrichment but was struggling as a result of spending time out of the regular class, whether or not that shouldn't be perhaps a selection criteria as you get involved in that, because a student should be able to maintain their progress in their regular studies and gain from the involvement in enrichment and hopefully not have it as a trade-off.
Exactly.
Or in fact, maybe lose one and gain the other, and therefore it's less effective than we would want it to be.
Which is also another reason why we need to look at the
It's not as
enrichment
simple and
curriculum.
straightforward.
Correct.
There are complexities and subtleties.
We need to look at the enrichment curriculum to ensure that there is that parity between, the core instruction and the enrichment program as well.
Sure, absolutely.
So we'd like to speak to that as
We'll
well.
have time for public comment from the public at the end of the meeting, if that's okay?
We do have a little bit of that data as well. As teachers, we set goals every year that are data-driven. And over the last 2-3 years, we've been looking at NWEA scores for our kids that are in the program, top 10% of kids that are not in the program. And we do have access to their power school grades as well, that we monitor those to make sure they're staying on track in the regular classrooms.
Yeah, we always maintain really close communications with both parents and teachers, anticipating what you're speaking to, saying if there's any kind of a deficit. When you start seeing any drop, especially in math, is always what I try to look at because of the nature of math being so, orderly. You have those steps you have to go up, so you can't skip. So if they're missing something, we also, in the program, we can take a timeout, which we've done. We take a timeout as well, too. So let's say a child is, even now I'm having conversations this with teachers whose students are maybe mathematically having a struggle. Well, we can say this week, hold back for the math, and then you can kind of catch up. Because, new concepts, when they're with us, they're being introduced to new concepts in the classroom. You'd like to think everything kind of halts for these kids, but that is not the case. New concepts can be introduced, of which, again, they are new to it. So they're gonna maybe pick it up, quicker once they see it, but they still need that exposure to that initial concept. So those are things that we kind of address as the year goes on and keep close tabs on.
I'm going to piggyback on what Tom was saying. Having been on both sides of the classroom for 13 years, I experienced those kids getting pulled out going, oh, it's an enrichment take. But what they're doing now with the scheduling, they're going to their special in the morning. However, they're getting back to their homeroom classroom for math. So they're not actually missing that math instruction, which is great. Especially with investigations, it is so time sensitive and sequential. You do have to keep up with it. So the way our day is structured and flows, they're not missing their math instruction. So that's definitely a huge bonus to our scheduling and this other stuff.
Federico?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have a couple of questions. First of all, I just want to say everything that you presented tonight looked fantastic, and I've heard a lot of emails and letters coming to me in the past week from people who are very happy with the program. I have two comments or questions. One is regarding the students being served in the school as opposed to traveling. I know as a parent, I heard concerns from other parents being raised about the time that the students were also spending out of school traveling. So not just the cost of the buses, but the time of the buses. So I don't know if that was a factor in the decision, but it was certainly, a comment or a complaint that I heard from parents previously. The other thing is I heard comments from parents previously that felt that the one comment I would hear is they felt that their child was in the enrichment program but felt that they weren't being challenged. And I don't know if that's a comment from the past, or if that, and that's not the case anymore, or if that is something that you hear. So, and I don't know if it's, parents, I don't know if it's about the parents' expectations or if there is something that's changed in the program recently.
So I can say that when I came into the district, I heard that from more than one parent.
Okay.
That was 6 years ago.
Okay.
And parents, they were pleased that we had a program, but they did not feel that it necessarily was rigorous enough and challenging enough. It wasn't an issue about the creativity piece or any of that. It was more that kids were really challenged to, again, one of you just talked about, to be thinking very, very different ways outside of the box, to explore, things that they, ways of thinking that they just never had before. I have not heard that, recently, meaning in the last couple of years. In fact, I've heard the opposite, that the vast majority of parents are pleased, with the program. I think there was nervousness around when the reconfiguration happened again, going back to K-5, and I think there was nervousness with the redistricting. But I have not heard, and maybe I'm naive, but generally speaking, my experience has been the administration hears, particularly the superintendent, assistant superintendent, they hear directly from parents of children who are identified as gifted if the program is really not up to snuff, so to speak, and I have not.
Okay, no, that's a perfect answer, thank you.
Any other questions? Dr. Gregory?
I'm excited to hear what you guys had to present, and I'm even more excited to hear about the process of curricular review. It will be exciting for me to see how the enrichment program embeds and draws on the alignments within the Common Core to really extend the topics within the core as opposed to having things that are separate. So I really like the opportunities that are embedded in that you guys already have planned, that curricular review.
Other comments or questions? Stacy and then Mr. DeGrego.
Just a comment, just wanted to thank all of you for being here tonight and for presenting, and for the families and students also for sharing. I think it's a wonderful program, it's creative, it's engaging. The collaboration piece is a great piece as well, and we're lucky to have the program in the school, and it's a great time to look forward to seeing how we can strengthen the program.
Mr. DeGrego.
I was very impressed with the presentations by everyone involved and the thoroughness that Mr. Birch expresses through his, the way he presents the information to us so we can all understand. And I thank you, Mr. Birch, for that. What impressed me was, as the table was set, and I think it was Mrs. Kim that said, we have public speaking. Now, when I was attending the City University in New York, the dean of my studies said, Mike, why don't you try public speaking your last year? And here I am with adults that were older than me. You'd be surprised how frightened they were just to get up in front of our class to present a lesson that they had for homework. They would be like, I can't do it, I can't. And when Mrs. Kim said, after all that went on, that they had to find out locks and go on computers and do all the things, she said, we do a public speaking. I think that's novel. It's like it sets the whole table and it's the cherry on the sundae. I don't know who came up with that public speaking part, but that is novel. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? I know for me, when I hear you speak of enrichment for all, excuse me, I have some laryngitis. I think that's very exciting. Really, when you come right down to it, we talk about lifting the glass ceiling on the AP, the high school. For the younger kids, really for many of them, if you give them that opportunity and give them the right tools, they'll excel and they'll meet the challenge. Because when you look at what they're doing in an enrichment program, that's what, exactly what we're hearing now as being the trends in the regular classroom. So I really am looking forward to seeing how we can fit these pieces all together so that we can, bring more enriching curriculum to all of the students in Milford. So thank you very much. And with that said, any other questions or comments?
Sure, if I may, I just want to again thank everyone for coming out, to the teachers and Ms. Carlson for putting this together. Excellent job. Thanks to all the parents and the students for coming out. And just to recall, just to bring out everyone to our district goals. 3B is about deep thinking, problem solving. I think we see the epitome of that happening here. And to your comment, Ms. Glennon, it's we want to see that for all of our students. So I greatly appreciate the time for allowing us to give you an overview.
So we have one more agenda item before we go on to public comment. If you care to hang out and see what we're going to talk about next. It's exciting as well, college and career pathway.
Okay. Just to give you a brief overview, again, the board has asked us to create two career pathways. We are currently implemented the first career pathway in computer science, and through a long process over the past few months, we have been able to narrow down our selection. To give you a brief review, we had a couple surveys that went out, we had the community conversation, and then we had a couple board workshops, and we believe that we have come to our conclusion that the entrepreneurship career pathway would be the one that the administration recommends. I can answer any questions if you have any, but we would like to move forward on this. We do have the program of studies that is coming out that we have to put together in the next couple weeks. So it would be something we would like to include with the program of studies for our high school students.
So board members, do we have any other questions or comments on the information that has been presented so far? Mr. Whiskeyman?
I guess my only question is the level of confidence you have that you will be ready to implement this with this next year, because I am fairly aware of just how much it takes to put this all together. It's not a trivial exercise. And I want to make sure that it's a successful launch and that we've lined everything up so that we're ready to go.
Similarly to the current program, we're going to phase it in over time. Primarily, we're going to take a look at existing courses that we can use time this summer to revise to be more aligned with modern practices as well as the pathway, and then we'll look to increase the number of courses or any new courses over time over the next 2 to 3 years. We are working closely with both high schools to ensure that we're going to be able to implement a capstone project, as well as trying to establish relationships with the community for any kind of internships. It's, again, very early on. It's in nascency. We only have a few internships at this last year. We believe we're going to have many more this year, and hopefully by 3 years from now, we'll have enough to fulfill both pathways.
Do we anticipate budget implications?
Yes, we're currently working on that. Predominantly, it's going to be in curriculum writing and revision for this upcoming year, as well as professional development. Possibly some equipment and other resources.
Do we have somebody right now handling, overseeing the internship program?
Yes, Ms. Kelsey Burns over at Law is currently overseeing internships for both schools. We're working closely with both guidance counselor departments.
Any other questions? Ms. Federico?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one comment. When we were discussing this as a board and we sat through workshops, we talked about the wide variety of careers that could be tied to this pathway. So I just want to make sure that in the documentation, when the message is communicated to students, that wide variety is in there, kind of encapsulated in the message. And it may be a little challenging to do that because we had multiple workshops, we had multiple handouts, but I just want to make sure that people get how broad this is, because it has so many implications in so many fields.
To be honest, I'm not sure they're going to get that year one.
Yeah.
But as we build up and we integrate more courses into it, and we have more students going through it and more opportunities and building relationships with the community, my hope is that it will grow and the community's understanding will grow as well as our students' understanding.
Right, because we talked about as these are life skills that an artist could use, a graphic designer, an architect, any of those people may end up being entrepreneurs someday.
Or issues with our turf shoes.
Got an invention in the works there. Could some nuance of this be maybe worked into the general informational text that's put in the course
catalog?
Yeah, the course catalog, just kind of alluding to the
highlight exciting 2 new career pathways, absolutely.
And I think also what would be appropriate is we put together a brochure similar to what was put together around the computer science. It may not be as detailed with respect to here's the actual pathway over the next, 3 or 4 years. But it certainly would be able to give an idea of the kind of thing you were talking about, Mrs. Federico, about the different directions that kids could go, so that the average student as well as the parents would understand, well, what is this about? Interestingly enough, about maybe 3 weeks ago, I was in Boston, actually visiting a college friend I hadn't seen in a long, long time, and I was down in Faneuil Hall, and I went into one of the shops right there, and as I walked in, I knew there was something different because it was not wasn't a permanent shop. The structure was there. Well, they were there for literally that one day, and I started to talk with the person who runs it, and here what she said is she said, we rent out this space, and she said, and then we allow different, she didn't use the word entrepreneurs, but she talked about artists or, business people, et cetera, to be able to then come in, and maybe they stay for 3 or 4 days, or they stay for 2 days or whatever, and they set up, and then they're selling whatever it is, their crafts or, all different kinds of things. And so we had this really interesting conversation. And I said to her, I said, it's interesting to hear what you're saying. I said, we're trying to move toward a career pathway in entrepreneurship. She said, I work with a number of schools in Massachusetts. It was just sort of uncanny to sort of have this conversation with this person. And I'm thinking, they got to pay unbelievable rent to be right smack down in Faneuil Hall, But on the other hand, you could see these were really high-quality craftsmen that were, then going in, renting that space for whatever, 24, 48 hours or a week, et cetera, and, putting their name out there and their wares out there. It was just really kind of interesting. And while we're not in a position to do that, that's not to suggest that down the road, who knows that we couldn't get a place here in Milford that we might rent out, that kids then might be able to do. When you start to kind of envision what this might look like, to try out something that they're passionate about,
Mrs. Krasinski?
Would this be in place so that incoming students next year to the 2 high schools would be able to start on the career pathway for the next 4 years and know?
Well, we know we have several courses in place right now that kids could start to pursue. I think that the challenge for us is to start to educate kids and families about what you can do when you pull different kinds of courses together.
I'm not really sure how it's set up, but do you pick your courses freshman year with a look towards sophomore, junior, senior?
I think in a similar vein to the computer science one, if you recall our discussion, it's not a lockstep major, like in college, that there's opportunities for kids to drop into this, but for the capstone project, for instance, there will be some, you can't just drop into a capstone project. You're going to have some core courses behind that. But the variety of courses we currently have that we can tweak, from sports and entertainment marketing, retail marketing, mass media, et cetera, that we can now revise this summer and update, like we do with many of our programs, and have them be more aligned to this concept. That would be the first stepping stones. But again, I'm going to be honest with you, the program of studies is going to be a very rough outline. It's not going to be a very well polished type of, this is exactly what it's going to look like, because we have to get it done in the next week, Friday, tomorrow. So it's going to be very rough. But I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if this year, is it something that students who are going to be choosing classes for next year can say, oh, that looks interesting, and maybe I'll be able to do that, or is it going to be
It will be articulated, and as we develop it over time, we'll be working with the guidance counselors both at the high school and for 8th grade as they're moving forward to help them understand the process and to help them, understand how this might be a potential pathway. Again, one of the difficulties we have, we talked about this when we talked about middle school, we'll do students in 6th grade really know, what they want to be. Many do, some do, we may have some in the audience, I'm going to be a biotech engineer, I'm going to raise your hand, so, but some do not, so majority do not. So it's difficult to set them on a path.
But this one is just high school.
Correct,
pathway, right?
correct. So again, it's to say, there's opportunities to start in 9th grade, but that doesn't mean you couldn't start in 10th grade, potentially 11th grade, depending upon how we flesh it out. and depending upon some of the courses you took earlier.
We're also becoming aware of some school systems across the state that have entrepreneurship programs. There's even a magnet school that's an entrepreneurship magnet school. So what we'd really like to do is to also kind of get a sense of what's happening in those schools that we might be able to, steal some good ideas and
Borrow.
Do we have, I just remember this from the dark ages when I was in high school, a DECA program, because that was sort of like.
I think Ford has one. I think Ford has a DECA program. if I'm not
Because I know
mistaken.
that kind of went hand in hand with the business schools and the
Both
entrepreneurship.
schools run, for example, school stores, and there's different things that kids are doing, that's business related. But it's generally the kids who are in that business kind of accounting, kind of a track, and what we want to do is to broaden that.
I was just curious.
Any other questions? So really, Dr. Fee is just looking for our blessing. We wouldn't normally necessarily vote on this because we did direct them to develop a program, and this is the program of their choice. So does any board member have any strong objections to pursuing the entrepreneurship college and career pathway? And then I guess you have our blessing.
Thank you very much. We're excited.
Couple of thumbs up.
Yep, thumbs up. Okay, so we'll move on to public comment. So I'm going to read the public comment statement, and then you'll have an opportunity to address the board. Speakers may offer objective comments about school operations and programs. The board encourages speakers not to express personal complaints or defamatory comments about the Milford Board of Education personnel or any person associated with Milford Public Schools. Security issues and matters relating to negotiations and grievances will not be permitted, consistent with the principles of the Federal Education Right to Privacy Act. Discussion of students is prohibited absent parental waiver. Please note that public comment is limited to agenda items only at the committee of the whole meeting, so that'd be the career pathway update or the enrichment program. We ask that you state your name and address before speaking and limit your comments to 3 minutes, and note that we are being televised. So is there anybody who would like to address the board this evening?
All right, well, I'll stand up. I am also representing a couple of other families, and I'm passing on the letters that they've written as well to the board.
Okay.
I've made copies of each for you. There's 3 there. There should be.
Are these emails that were already sent to us for the most part?
I believe one was sent earlier today.
So that we probably already have them.
And this one was not, I think it was just sent to me. So my name's Lori Ann Saluda. I live at 156 Clark Hill Road in Milford. I am a parent of an East Shore Middle School 6th grader, and he's been in the enrichment program since 4th grade. I forgot, he also has something. My husband and I also coach First Lego League team in town, and that's something that we started a few years ago to provide extra enrichment opportunities for children. We actually have 10 students, 9 of whom actually participate in the enrichment program as well. And so these letters were from other parents in the enrichment program. Is it okay if I read on their behalf as well?
Well, you have 3 minutes, so, I mean, if we've already gotten some of these, I think we've already received.
Yes, I know the one from Mr. Hines you've received, and the other one is from Karen Allen, and Esther Wilson is actually here, so she'll read herself. I just want to say that for me and for my son, I asked him to express what the enrichment program means to him. And he said it's an opportunity to, well, actually, can I have you for me? It's an opportunity to do different things, to be challenged. Specifically, he says the projects are better, they're more interesting. Most of the time that class is boring for him. The non-school stuff like logic puzzles and word winks and projects are really things that he really enjoys and engages him. He feels that in middle school, being in enrichment for only 3 periods isn't enough, that he wants to be there longer. In regular classes, he finishes so much earlier, particularly in math. I mean, one of the questions that came up earlier that we wanted to address, and you said, well, is this going to add a detriment to their other academic subjects? For him, absolutely not. He spends most of the time in class waiting for other kids to finish their work. When I asked him about what he's learned. He said, well, I finish my work, I finish my assignment, and then I help other kids because they're not really getting it. And so the teacher can't spend all their time trying to help them, so they asked me to help out. And that's great, and that just, it enriches his learning, I do believe, but at the same time, that's not his job. He should be challenged. He should have enough opportunity in class to do more. And he gets to do more interesting topics. And so this is why enrichment is important for him.
Thank you very much. Anybody else care to address the board?
I go to Camp Penn, and my address is 84 Overhill Road.
So on the car right over here, I asked Kira what she thought of the enrichment program and why she values it. And her answer I thought was very noteworthy to share with everybody here today.
It's really fun, and we have lots of challenges, and they give us really cool puzzles to figure out. And I really like the projects because we get to learn new stuff about them. And we learned about an app called Prezi where we make presentations, and there are backgrounds that we get to choose from to write our project on. Thank you.
Thank you. So my name's Nicole Pena. I'm Kira's mom. I'm at 84 Overhill Road, and I am the mother of a creatively intelligent child. So her standardized test scores have always been solidly above average, but where she shines is in the creative piece. She'll come to school wearing an outfit that she sewed herself from patterns that she drew and cut out herself. We have units in the classroom about shipwrecks or about human rights, and she creates these artistic masterpieces with more glitter than you or I would know what to do with. It was the portfolio that I think really got her noticed as a brand new student to the Milford School District in 4th grade. She writes stories that you and I would not be able to distinguish from Michelle Silverstein. Little short story. She has that kind of creative silliness to her. And so her portfolio came together. And when I saw the collection that her teacher had pulled apart for her, it made me very proud. And I was very happy that those kind of intelligences were being recognized and cultivated in a school district where you would think of more typical worksheet assignments, standardized tests. But here she was getting to express and exercise and develop those kind of talents that are a little non-traditional in the school place. And then lastly, I just want to mention, I agree with you, sir, about the public speaking. She's always been a bit of a shy cookie, believe it or not. So a couple of years ago, for her to have stood up here and addressed you guys, it would not have happened. And I know in the last 2 years in these projects, the projects and the small groups and interacting with the curriculum, through the curriculum with the faculty and the community members, has given her a chance to really find her voice and given her the confidence with these projects to stand up and talk to people. And I kid you not, she would not have done that 2 years ago. So it's valued at our house, it's valued at our school. Oh, and I guess I should mention I'm the vice president of the Milford Association for Gifted Education. So we're the PTA for the enrichment kids, and we just, thank the staff so much for what they do, and thank you guys for your support and backing our kids, because this is just tremendously valuable in my household personally, I know. So thank you. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Joelle Coretti. I live at 314 West Rutland Road. I'm a lifelong Milford resident and currently a parent of 2 students in Milford Public Schools. I'm personally very grateful that the enrichment program exists in Milford. I attended the Milford Enrichment Program myself 30 years ago, and my 9-year-old son is now part of the program as a 4th grader at Matthews. My participation in enrichment was incredibly positive. It had a huge impact on my overall education. I had the opportunity to take responsibility for my day and my work, to learn to think creatively, critically, analytically, to research by curiosity, and to form close social bonds and be challenged by other students like me. My son is equally enthusiastic about his experience with enrichment. He comes home excited about what he's permitted to explore. He's given the opportunity to stretch his brain and learn for himself the potential that he has. He's motivated, he feels validated, and he's learning about the world and himself in a way that complements his classroom curriculum and will stay with him for a lifetime. I can say that from experience. I recently learned, I'll echo what some of the comments were earlier, that the room that's utilized for enrichment at Mathewson is not, excuse me, very nervous, is not a dedicated space, meaning it's utilized for other activities. And they're not able to leave projects, start working on projects, come back to them, have a place to sort of call their own. When I attended many years ago, students enrolled at the elementary level would be bused from their home school to Central Grammar, where dedicated classrooms were equipped with art supplies, lab tools for science experiments, a kitchen. We actually had committees and cooked lunch for the entire classroom, and challenging puzzles, books, and much, much more. Because we had our own space, we could start projects and leave them. And we were motivated to learn more about our interests we experienced working as a team, both in small groups for projects and as an entire class. I'm a little concerned now that the program now doesn't have that dedicated space and access to resources. 30 years ago, the possibilities were seemingly endless to 4th and 6th graders, and I fear that by not giving them the tools that they need, we're moving backwards. While the district moves forward with planning and budgeting, I hope that you'll consider defining classroom space and allocating.
15 seconds left.
Okay, hurry up. Milford has extraordinary services for students with all kinds of special needs, and enrichment to me is no different. It's a specialized program to meet students' specialized needs. Right here within our public schools, ultimately allows them to reach their potential academically and in our community. And there's no telling what they can accomplish if given the investment and the opportunity. So, thank you.
Is there anybody else who'd like to address the board this evening?
My name is Ben Warders and I live at 70 Oak Ridge Lane. I was part of the enrichment program in my 5th grade year and my 6th grade year. I was one of the last students to take part in the original enrichment program where we were bused over to Cath Penn before it changed to the individual school setup. And in middle school when it changed from the project-based, like all around just one enrichment subject, one teacher, to the 3-teacher subject and project-based system, which I actually would have liked to have gotten into more. I wish I was around now that these amazing things that I demo. I was like, wow, I want to do that. But to me, I would also like to revisit the idea of the classroom space that is dedicated to the enrichment, because that was huge for all of us. Like Mr. Stack mentioned the tornado chamber. That was my year when we did that. That was one of my friends, Michael Shudo. He created basically almost like a square floor shower sized tornado chamber in which he was able to learn about physics and science in his 5th grade year, which is kind of absurd when you think about it for someone that small to be doing something so intense mentally and mathematically. It was really amazing to see the product come together. Enrichment to me was kind of like my creative outlet, and having that space was huge. For my project, I actually did a video about why enrichment should still be in place, because that was one of the many years that we thought about. What was that it was changing or going to be
It
shut
was the
down?
switch. So you were hearing rumors of the switch
Yeah.
before it came down the pike. So parents were kind of saying before we had gone to that new model, they weren't sure what was happening with the program. So a lot of the kids were a little nervous.
So I had put together a video with my class about how, like, what enrichment does for us and how how helpful it is and how it lets us be creative in ways that normal school classes don't let us be. I was in the same scenario where I would finish my work in my normal classes way ahead of time, and I'd be helping the other kids. Well, meanwhile, I would be much rather learning about things like computer science that wasn't in, especially in the elementary schools, we didn't have any computer classes, we didn't have any like audio-visual like classes that I would have been interested in. I'm an audiovisual kid, I'm now an entrepreneur who owns a business in high school. And almost all of that was because I was able to express my creativity and enrichment and explore those areas with the time and resources that
15 seconds left.
I wish I had more time, so I'd also like to talk about the career pathways, because those are great. I'm excited to switch those around. Those are the two things that I am doing now that I would love to do, but I just really want to express how great enrichment was for me and how important it is to that it stays here and that it's always looked upon as something that we
Thank you. I'll talk about the career pathways on his behalf, if that's okay. I'm his mother, Kelly Warder, 70 Oak Ridge Lane. Both my boys have been in enrichment, so I've seen the changes. He was the K through 5, the old model where they got bused. He's the K through 2. We were kindergarten, we were everywhere. But anyhow, in terms of your pathways, he's the poster child for that. Enrichment gave him the wings. He owns Oak Ridge Productions, and he does a lot of work for the schools. I think he's done 550 volunteer hours doing DJing dances, setting up all of the audio-visual for talent shows. He works for the Milford Education Foundation, does all of their audio-visual, the Milford Prevention Council, the Fine Arts. What's that called?
Milford Council.
Yeah, no, the Fine Arts.
Milford Council.
Council, yeah. So he is the poster child, and he didn't even have your pathways. So he learned his computer science through Johns Hopkins University. He took classes on the side because they didn't offer any in the schools, and you allowed him to include that in his, I guess.
Transcript.
Yeah, in the transcript. So that has been wonderful for him, and kudos for these pathways, because it's just, the kids are gonna, wait till you see all the things that can bloom from this. And clearly I didn't have public speaking when I was younger. But, and on the other hand, my other son has gone into the Lego competitions. He has done the invention convention. He is so excited to be learning what he is learning in the middle schools. Enjoyed all of the enrichment in the elementary schools, and I'm very excited to see where he ends up with everything that he's been allowed to do creatively in the schools instead of just sitting down and learning math and learning, you know, it's just a much better model for the kids who get bored in the regular classroom. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Christopher Saluga, 156 Clark Hill Road. I'll just reiterate what my wife said a little bit. It's a very important program to us. It would be a very bad feeling when we go into our parent-teacher conference in October and are told, your son meets and exceeds all the standards for this grade already, if we didn't have the enrichment program, knowing that he was going to have something else to look forward to and build towards. And I think part of the appeal of the program not only are the great projects that the teachers do with them, but actually the fact that they get out of the normal classroom where they are not that challenged in many subjects is actually a big benefit. And I'd like to thank all the teachers for their hard work. We've been, just very lucky to have great teachers in the enrichment program, and I would encourage you to please, it sounds like we're on the right track, but please, any resources you can put their way, anything that you can do to support the program would be greatly appreciated. It's very important to all of us. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Ashley Grant. I live at 31 Winthrop Court, and I am the president of the Mage PTA. First of all, I'm just very grateful for this workshop because for many of the parents in the with students in the enrichment program, this is a mystery. We don't know how the whole system works together, and so this has been enlightening for one tonight. So very grateful for that. Enrichment program has always excited me. I participated in future problem solving in the enrichment version of this down in Georgia when I was going to school, and that was the most formational experience for my education. I used problem solving and critical thinking in my daily life, whether it's managing my own household or in my work and service opportunities in the community. So I think it's invaluable to their education. As a mom of 2 kids in the program, and as someone who dedicates my time in the PTA to trying to bring the families together for the good of the program and the students, I offer any resources that I can through the PTA, and as a parent, as this discernment continues for whether addressing the curriculum or what this program can look like. And we as parents, we're excited to know how to help our kids to reach their potentials and to challenge themselves, and sometimes it is a mystery. So we look to this program and offer our support. We're ready to go anytime for that opportunity to do this new version of problem solving at this level. So thank you.
Thank you.
Esther Wilson, 34 Wall Street, and I'm just going to read what my daughter, Violet Wilson, in 6th grade wrote. I asked her to write something. So, dear Milford Board of Education, I am a student in the Enrichment program. I have thoroughly enjoyed it since before I started in 4th grade. Everything was pretty much easy. Then I got dropped off in Mr. Stack's room and finally felt challenged. Mr. Stack doesn't do work, but likes to twist new learning and excitement with fun. We learned about Egypt, along with all the curses and bindings of ancient tombs. Then we broke into teams to create fun and interesting newspapers about what we had learned in Publisher. I helped to come up with interesting headlines, new ways to incorporate what we learned, and a fun title for the newspaper. Mr. Stack introduced me to Publisher, Word, and SketchUp, where we made house designs and other creations. That year, when I was introduced to this, was something I'll never forget. The next year, we had the district change, and I landed with Mrs. Constantine. She taught me so much more. One of the things I learned was all about shipwrecks, why they happened, and I got to make my own ship with my classmates and see how it did in challenges. I also learned about human rights, which I had never heard of before, and even spent 2 hours baking brownies and cookies for the Columbus House as my benefit to a right act. Everyone did something that helped with a right end, and we ended up winning the Mayor's Youth Award for all our hard work. Then I was challenged yet again in the Impressionism unit when I had to use paints to make my own impressionistic painting. Now I am in 6th grade, and so far for the first trimester, I have had Mrs. Stoltenberg, and am readying myself to create my invention for the Invention Convention. All of her word links, Odyssey of the Mind, and brain food activities have taught me how to look at something in a different way. Any day we have off that's an enrichment day is a sad one, since I enjoy it so much. Overall, I've learned so much in this program, had so much fun, and have experienced all kinds of things I never would have otherwise. I love enrichment, and I'm proud that Connecticut is one of the states that does it. Sincerely, Violet Wilson, in the 6th grade.
Good, thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to just?
Hi, I'm Jackson Waters. I live at 70 Acres Lane, and really, I am a student now in enrichment, and really, enrichment for me means some time of the day where really I do get challenged. I do have to think outside the box. I do have to think in different ways, different views, different, really everything about solving problems, solving anything that comes to mind, or anything that we learn in class or out of the enrichment classes. And really, it's just this really special time because we have so much fun collaborating with each other, seeing each other's ideas and thoughts on all the subjects and problems that we do. And really, it's just it's really fun and amazing because we get to learn so much about things that we know that we'll probably touch on later or touch on that we have touched on earlier within class and out of enrichment class. And it really challenges us because one of the ideas that came up was keeping on track with classes when you skip the classes for enrichment. And really, in middle school now, we do have learning center periods where we can go to teachers and see what we missed, and we do check in with teachers in between periods to see what we do in the day, what we are going to do, what we have to do, and to turn things in that we haven't turned things in yet. And we do keep on top of things, and when we do have to miss a day of enrichment, it's fine. You know, we don't really miss anything that's too important that we really don't have to, you know, that we will do in the next week, and we'll do next class. And I just really like being in the enrichment program.
Thank you very much. Anybody else who'd like to address the board this evening? We heard from everybody. Thank you for coming out. Okay, with that said then, seeing no other comments, I'll call for motion to adjourn.
Yep, motion to adjourn. Second.
Any, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
I know.